Hey, welcome back, everyone. Well, it looks like this Trump raid on Mar-a-Lago, or the raid on Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, has just gotten a bit bigger because now the White House itself appears to be implicated. It looks like Joe Biden may have signed off on part of this, allowing for this raid to happen, which means that, folks, this is like not only Watergate level, meaning a president is interfering with a political rival at this point, but actually probably a lot bigger. I'm going to be talking about what happened with that, where this is going, and what that means, because this just became a whole lot bigger. At the same time, folks, we're going to have a special guest today. It's Paul Greeny. He's the host of Fresh Look America at NTD. He just released a special feature about this Mar-a-Lago raid, but also tying it into kind of the history of the Spygate scandal and putting this whole thing in perspective. It's a great video. If you haven't watched it yet, check it out. It's also on Epic TV, so if you're watching the show on Epic TV, check it out as well. Also, folks, not sure if you saw, but I was on Tucker Carlson last night. I would have announced it ahead of time so you all could watch it live, but they typically, I've been on there a couple times now. They typically reschedule a lot, so I didn't want to tell you all to watch it and then it gets rescheduled. But if you haven't yet, check it out. Go to my Twitter page. I have it posted. It's Josh J. Phillip. Yeah, it was a great segment. We talked about the documentary on J6, and it was great to see him cover it too. All right, that said, folks, always wonderful being here with y'all. Good morning. Thank you. Those of you on YouTube, don't forget as well, after about 25-ish minutes, we will jump exclusively to Epic TV. So if you don't have an account yet, jump in the description below the video, grab a free trial, come join us. I do an hour and a half show, and so there's a lot to talk about. We do the live Q&A over there, so it's always a great audience, always a great show. So come join us. All right, folks, that said, let's talk about the first story. I want to go into this issue now coming out that Biden signed off on at least part of this raid, at least authorizing part of it. And this is important on a few levels. Remember that soon after the raid took place, Trump was saying, did Obama, was Obama, maybe really, but was Biden involved with this? Did this go to the White House? Did Biden sign off on this? Biden pretty much threw his hands up in the air and said, no, Jack, I ain't done nothing, basically. Not his exact words, of course. He denied it. He said he wasn't involved with it. The White House denied it. And then Merrick Garland stepped forward, took the bullet, so to speak, and took the blame for it. Merrick Garland, head of the DOJ, Attorney General, came out and said that he personally signed off on it, and that pretty much, cleared Biden's name, so it didn't go that high. There's a clear reason why they would do that. Well, and of course now it's coming out that they lied to us. They lied about this, at least based on documents coming out that John Solomon has gotten his hands on. They lied to us about this, and this is important because there's a reason why they were trying to say that Biden was not involved. Because if Biden was involved, this becomes an issue of political persecution. This becomes an issue of the weaponization of the Department of Justice to attack a political enemy. And this becomes something much more serious than even Watergate was. Again, during Richard Nixon's time in office, when he was accused of weaponizing the FBI and other agencies to go and raid at night, the dead of night, the Democrat headquarters at the Watergate Hotel, at the Watergate building. Now, that was a big scandal because using the arms of justice with the attempt to manipulate the outcome of an election, which is what Nixon was accused of doing, is pretty dang serious. Biden now has done that. He did it in broad daylight, not the dead of night. And he did it, really, it seems, by authorizing a raid that very likely violates the law, and in a way that looked to actually incriminate his political enemy. This is unfolding very rapidly. This is becoming, I think, a much bigger issue than even I had initially expected. But let me go over this. So Just the News had this story. They had the exclusive on it. They got the leaked memo. It says Biden White House facilitated Department of Justice criminal probe against Trump. Scuttled privilege claims. In other words, Biden allegedly got rid of Trump's executive privilege. And that's according to memos they're saying. It says, long before it professed to no prior knowledge of the raid on Donald Trump's estate, the Biden White House worked directly with the Justice Department and National Archives to instigate the criminal probe into alleged mishandling of documents, allowing the FBI to review evidence retrieved from Mar-a-Lago this spring and eliminating the 45th president's claims to executive privilege, according to contemporaneous government documents reviewed by Just the News. Now it says, the memos show, the ones that they obtained, that then White House Deputy Counsel Jonathan Su was engaged in conversations with FBI, DOJ, and National Archives as early as April, shortly after 15 boxes of classified and other material were voluntarily returned to the Federal Historical Agency from Trump's Florida home. By May, Su, this individual, conveyed to the archives that President Joe Biden, this is where it gets important, he conveyed that President Joe Biden would not object to waiving his predecessor's claims to executive privilege. In other words, he's saying that Biden himself agreed to waive Donald Trump's executive privilege, meaning pretty much they're claiming that Trump somehow is not president and doesn't have the normal authorities or the normal legal protections of a president. Now, briefly on that, of course, the Democrats, and I'd say even the establishment Republicans, the old school, when I'd say there's a shakeup and there's a new Republican Party, really, but the old school establishment, let's call them, the Republicans and the Democrats, PT, pre-Trump, different body overall. They did not recognize Trump as president. They would not recognize his authority. They had their T-shirts and hats and signs, "Not my president." Remember this? They never wanted to acknowledge that Trump was president. And really, this is because we were living under, it seems to be the case, more like an oligarchy, more like a system ruled by the elites. Not the government by the people, of the people, and for the people, where the average American could, become president, and every kid in the country is told, you could become president one day. Remember you were a kid and you were told that in school? It turned out to be the case. They didn't want that. And unless you were part of their little elite club, you could not become, you could not obtain high office and be recognized as having legitimate authority. These individuals with their dynastic, family-run, times in office and so on, believe that they are of a different class than the American people, the average American who they tend to look down on, flyover country, and the people who really they serve. There's a real disconnect. They believe that they have a different set of laws for themselves, that they are above the law in many cases. They believe that that they don't need to listen to the little man because they just know better. They believe that they have authorities that the average American should not be given. And they believe that especially the constitutional rights that protect those rights of Americans from their authority need to be tossed out because they just know better what you need. Really, that's kind of the mentality, unfortunately, with a lot of these elitist, I'd say establishment folks. And I would argue on my own analysis that this is the reason why they also did not recognize Trump as being a legitimate president, because Trump did not come from their whole club. Trump was the first president who didn't come from that lineage of being a general or a senator or whatever else. He was he came from pretty much the entertainment industry, and of course his real estate. He was a businessman, but essentially the idea that an average American, at least to some extent, if you consider a TV star to be an average American, of course, an average American could rise to the heights of the country and political power. They did not recognize that. And it's interesting now that Biden made the determination himself that Trump should not have executive privilege. In other words, Biden made the determination that Trump should not have the normal protections and normal rights that a president should have. And so Biden made that decision to waive his predecessor's claims to executive privilege, which is also, probably illegal, frankly. You can't just remove the normal authority of someone on a whim like that. You can't just strip someone of their constitutionally protected rights on a whim like that. And yes, the ability of the president to have broad abilities to declassify documents and so on is a right the president has. Biden made the determination that shouldn't be the case. Personally, it seems. It says here that's a decision that opened the door for DOJ to get a grand jury to issue a subpoena compelling Trump to turn over any remaining materials he possessed from his presidency. In other words, that determination made by Joe Biden, according to these memos and according to Just the News, was then used to initiate a criminal investigation into Trump, removing the legalities that protected him from this. Basically, this is what happened. Trump had legal protection to do what he did. Executive privilege that gave him the executive right to have those documents, the executive right to do that. He was legally protected. And then Biden himself, according to this, made the decision that the laws should be changed. Biden changed the laws. Biden stripped a former president of his rights and then used that after altering the laws to claim that Trump was then in violation of the law, and then used the Department of Justice and the FBI to go raid his home. That's what went down. That is extremely questionably legal. I'd say probably very illegal. But we can add that to the list alongside, stealing an election, of course. All right, further into this, it says this. That letter revealed Biden empowered the National Archives and Records Administration to waive any claim of executive privilege. So Biden's doing that, according to Just the News, allowed for that to happen. It revealed, again, that Biden gave the powers then by doing that, by altering the laws, by altering Trump's rights, that empowered the National Archives and Records Administration to waive any claim to executive privilege that Trump might assert to block DOJ from gaining access to the documents. They changed the laws to violate the laws. Does that make sense? They changed the law. They removed Trump's, protections to do that. I mean, who can do that? Imagine you walk into a store and you purchase something, and as you're walking up the door, the clerk then says, hey, I changed my mind that I'm changing the price of that, and you stole that, and I'm going to call in the police now to have you arrested. That's essentially what Trump did. He legally took something. He legally took these documents under executive privilege. And, of course, doing so, not only, again, as we discussed during the whole episode yesterday, that Trump actually went through the proper process of declassifying those documents, right? He legally took them with him. And then they changed the laws afterwards to make that illegal. That's how they did it. As a quote from that document, they're saying, it says, the counsel to the president has informed me that, in light of the particular circumstances presented here, President Biden defers to my determination. So Biden deferred to this individual in consultation with the Assistant Attorney General of the Office of Legal Counsel regarding whether or not I should uphold the former president's purported protective assertion of executive privilege, this individual Wall wrote. And he continues stating, I have therefore decided not to honor the former president's protective claim of privilege. This individual, under Joe Biden's nod to authority, decided that he should just waive the rights of a former president. Now it says the memos provide the most definitive evidence to date of the current White House's efforts to facilitate a criminal probe of the man Joe Biden beat in the 2020 election, and that may face again as a challenger in 2024. That involvement included the eliminating one of the legal defenses Trump might use to fight the FBI over access to his documents. I would argue that, of course, Just the News, they tend to be pretty good. But I would argue that it didn't eliminate one of the legal defenses Trump has. You can't just change the laws and then say someone violated a law after you changed it. You can't just, it's like someone walks into a store and then they tell you after you walk into the store that, hey, I decided this is private property and you're trespassing now, and so I'm going to have you arrested. You can't just, invite someone in under normal legal pretense and say it is legal for you to do this, and then after they do it, then change the law and tell them they did something illegal. I mean, normally you would even call that entrapment, where you, for example, invite someone to commit a crime. You make it appear that it's legal for them to do something, and then after you do it, you then change the books and say, ha, gotcha, trap. You can't do that. And it seems that Biden himself was involved in trying to do this. Now, folks, we do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by American Hartford Gold. I'll go deeper into this. Inflation is at its highest levels in 40 years. Interest rates are skyrocketing, and a recession now looms ahead of us. Caught between runaway inflation and a recession, our retirement accounts are in real danger. If you want to protect your future, you can call American Hartford Gold. They can show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by diversifying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. All it takes to get started is a short phone call. They'll have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or into your IRA or 401k. And they also make it easy to do that. They have an A-plus rating from the BBB and thousands of satisfied clients. If you call them right now, they'll give you up to $2,500 of free silver and a free safe on your first qualifying order. So don't wait. Call them now. That's 877-260-2764. Again, 877-260-2764. Or you can text Joshua to 65532. And again, big thanks out to American Hartford Gold for sponsoring today's episode. And gold tends to be a pretty, well, silver especially, but tends to be a pretty stable investment. All right, folks. Again, we're going to have a special guest on today. It's Paul Greeny, and we're going to be talking about his new special feature about the Mar-a-Lago raid, but also tying this into Spygate and all that other stuff. I watched it actually before this episode. If you haven't seen it yet, it is on Epic TV, and I highly recommend watching it. We're gonna have him on in a bit to discuss that. But first, I'm going to talk about something else. Guess who decided to step down? Well, everybody's favorite doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Republicans, though, are saying that him stepping down is not going to protect him from a criminal, possibly, investigation. And this is important because Dr. Fauci was the architect of many of the failed and hypocritical and, frankly, contradictory policies that were implemented during the COVID-19 crisis. The lockdowns were part of his, mastermind scheme. The vaccine mandates were part of his scheme. The, requirements to wear face masks were part of his scheme, all of which are now seen to have not really done what they were supposed to do. All of which he previously acknowledged would not be useful. Funny enough. In fact, there's videos now emerging, even with the vaccine mandates, where Fauci many years ago was asked about, flu vaccines, and he was asked, what's the best inoculation? And Fauci said, well, get sick, get the flu, because natural immunity is the strongest protection. That's the same Dr. Fauci who's now telling you, keep getting boosted and getting your shots every several months. The same guy who said that contradicted himself previously on this. That same Dr. Fauci who previously acknowledged that face masks don't work because basically it's like trying to stop a fly with a big mesh fence. The particles of a virus are too small to be stopped by a face mask. It was basic knowledge. Fauci himself acknowledged it previously. And that's the same Fauci again who's now saying, wear your mask and wear your double mask and keep it on and make your kids wear it. That's the same Fauci. Now, Fauci has decided to leave office. This is being interpreted basically as him trying to leave office before Republicans are at least believed to be able to retake the House, which will allow them to set up investigative committees to investigate Fauci. And Republicans are now saying that, hey, Fauci, just because you're leaving office doesn't mean we're not going to investigate you. Let me show you. Epoch Times has this story. They're saying Dr. Anthony Fauci leaving the government won't, as in will not, shield him from a probe that Republicans in Congress plan to launch in early 2023, top lawmakers said on August 22nd. And this is James Comer saying, retirement can't shield Dr. Fauci from congressional oversight. And Representative Comer, the top Republican on the House Oversight Committee, said that in a statement. And Fauci announced earlier that he will step down in December, just weeks before Republicans are expected to take control of the House of Representatives. The GOP, the Republican Party, is in the minority in the lower chamber, at least currently, but based on historical election patterns and President Biden's lagging approval ratings, the party is forecast to flip enough seats to gain a majority in the upcoming midterm elections. That would make a Republican the chair of all of these committees, likely changing Comer to chair the Oversight Committee. Now, that's going to be important on several grounds because it also means that J6 committee is going to flip. And maybe we'll have a real nonpartisan one, or maybe Republicans will pull the same move the Democrats did and appoint, Democrats who just vote with them. We'll see what they do. You're going to see a lot of these things flip, and it seems Fauci is, fleeing before that can happen. Now, folks, on this note too, let me show you this: that Fauci is also being called out now on many of his lies because Fauci, contradicted himself many times. Contradicted himself maybe unintentionally, but if he did it intentionally, it means he was lying to the American people, and lying to the American people in a way that really destroyed a lot of people's lives. The lockdowns themselves are credited with, really skyrocketing suicide rates, families who lost their kids to suicide, kids having to wear face masks. In fact, new data even coming out suggesting the face masks themselves, some of the chemicals used on them, and very little protections on where people are buying them from, including from China, that actually may be even part of the symptoms people are experiencing with, quote-unquote, long COVID. Maybe we'll get something on that soon. Brownstone Institute had a great analysis piece explaining that. But regardless, on Fauci, Breitbart said this. They said critics roasted President Joe Biden's medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, after the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease chief falsely claimed he never advocated for lockdowns. Fauci's claiming he never advocated for lockdowns. The guy who is the architect in the United States of that policy. And they deemed him the biggest cheerleader for such restrictions, rules, and invasive mandates. Now, Fauci made the claim during a Monday appearance on The Hill's Rising, in which he claimed he didn't recommend locking anything down. And Fauci said, "You're asking me questions. You're talking about the CDC's, the public agency that uses their epidemiologists and their science-based approach to make recommendations." Fauci said during the interview, stunning listeners as he had, in fact, bragged about recommending lockdowns. Now it says, during a conversation in October 2020 with Holy Cross students, Fauci made it crystal clear that it was he who recommended former President Trump initiate the lockdowns. Fauci not only acknowledged previously that he did advocate for lockdowns, but took credit as being the one who convinced Trump to start that. This was Fauci. Fauci said this in 2020. He said, quote, "When it became clear that we had community spread in the country, I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. That was a very difficult decision because I knew it would have serious economic consequences, which it did." And Fauci went as far as calling it unfortunate that the United States did not shut down on the level that China or Korea did. China, under the Chinese Communist Party, is still in lockdown in many places, I should note. Now, it's for that reason that the illness continued to spread, according to Fauci, even though the country was widely locked down. So, folks, we can expect there to be possibly criminal investigations into Dr. Fauci for his actions. Of course, sometimes policies create abuses and policies cost lives. We will see whether Fauci did that knowingly, whether he actually believed that the policies he instituted would actually help people because, frankly, his previous statements, including on, again, vaccines for a flu, including on the use of face masks, previously he's caught on video saying that he did not believe these things actually work. So the question is, why did he force Americans to do that? Why did Americans have to get fired from their jobs to do that? Why did Americans lose their kids to suicide because of his bad policies? Why did America have to go through all of this when he was the one calling the shots and he was the one making the recommendations, and he himself, based on previous admissions, knew that these things don't work? Now, we can see where this goes. Again, he is stepping down from office coming December, and Republicans are saying if they retake the House, they are going to investigate him, regardless of whether or not he stepped down. All right, folks, I'm going to bring in our special guest, but let's jump over to Epic TV first. We have Paul Greeny with us. He's host of Fresh Look America at NTD, which is Epic Times' sister media. We're going to discuss his new special feature, which is called Raid on America. Let me show you a trailer of that, then we'll jump over. Sorry, he'll be on at 11:30, so we'll go over a couple more articles. But let me show you a trailer regardless, then we'll jump over.
I can't imagine what the affidavit would say to justify a seizure that broad.
There was essentially nothing in the body of this very classified document that gave any evidence that Trump was a Russian asset.
That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
All of these documents I'm taking are declassified. I mean, this is not some bureaucratic process.
I don't even know why that was necessary. I think it's just part of the tactics to try to increase pressure on those around President Trump.
My colleague, Peter Navarro, is arrested on a misdemeanor by an FBI SWAT team at Reagan Airport.
On January 25th, 2019, 29 fully SWAT-clad FBI agents who arrived in 17 armored vehicles with a government helicopter overhead and 2 FBI boats pulling up to the dock behind my house. I gather the purpose of this was intimidation.
Donald Trump, as a human being, as a man who is now a politician, is not owned by anybody. And that's what makes him very dangerous. He is lethal to the vested interests in this city, left and right.
All right, it seems our video is frozen. Let's see if we can get that fixed. One sec. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. All right, folks. Again, that's the new. It's a special feature we have. It's Raid on America. It's on Epic TV, so be sure to check it out. That said, we're going to jump over exclusive at Epic TV. We're going to have Paul on in just a bit. I want to go over what's happening with this attempted assassination in Russia with Dugin, and what that means for us, and what it means for possibly the continuation of a very